Ah, can you see the beach? It's like you're almost there. Ah, it's this little tiny plastic cube I have to go to the ocean when I need it. So, breathing. I thought we would quickly go over a tree. So this is another possible um, topic for an essay question. Basically, describe the controls or describe the way your brain controls breathing rate. And considering we also have a chapter coming up on the brain in our brain dissection next week, odds are pretty good because this would cover kind of two, not just respiration, but you'll learn just a bit more for the tree leaves next chapter. So let's go over this diagram, number 27 in your chapter. It's not a difficult diagram by any means. There are two at your brain stem here. The brain stem is called the medulla oblongata. There are two breathing control centers. The pons is a little round bump. You'll actually be able to see this. There's an actual textural difference when you split your spinal cord down through here. This is your cerebellum. This is your cerebrum, your corpus callosum. You can see here the pituitary hanging down. If this is your hypophysis, this is your hypothalamus, just to give you an idea where it is. Well, your brain is surrounded by and in the ventricles by fluid, and here it's on the outside of the brain and in all the ventricles. And by the time it gets to the spinal cord, your cerebral spinal fluid is actually on the inside, so it kind of switches between the two. You have breathing control centers. So the first thing is what does the medulla do? Well, the medulla sets the rhythm. I've got the rhythm in me. Sets the rhythm of your breathing, and the pons kind of evens it out. So it's not like that. It keeps it even. I think also if it knows it needs to get so much, instead of breathing a whole bunch and then not breathing so much, it'll kind of level it out. So they work together. They sense similar things. They sense the pH of the cerebral spinal fluid. And if you watched the last videos, pH is indicative of how much CO2 is dissolved in your blood, because CO2 and water make acid, right? H2O give you carbonic acid, HCO3, 3, and I think I have to slow down, my pen speed might be, and the hydrogen ion. So if the pH of the cerebral spinal fluid, which is closely tied to the pH of the blood, obviously, drops down, the medulla will send a signal to contract rib muscles and your diaphragm. Remember, if you're contracting, if it contracts, that means you're increasing the thoracic volume. That's contracted. You're increasing thoracic volume. So you're creating negative pressure. And you know it as inhaling. Now, this medulla and pons causes contractions only. Then it relaxes after the contractions automatically. So it just regulates the rhythm by regulating the contractions. So when it relaxes, it exhales. So your medulla is sensing the pH, and it sends via nerves, and these are called motor neurons. Any nerve that ends at a muscle is a motor neuron because it's going to cause movement. So pons and medulla do that. Now, if for some reason, and most breathing is not determined by oxygen, it's determined by CO2, but if for some reason oxygen levels get really low, O2 levels are sensed And they have to be really low. The set point is fairly low. They are sensed in the aorta and carotid arteries. So here is where these two sense O2 levels. So if O2 gets really low, I think your book gives the example of high altitudes, it will tell the breathing control centers to stimulate breathing. So this is the only time that oxygen is used to regulate your breathing. So looking at that, let's clear up the ink. Now I'm getting ready to erase all the ink, so pause and write stuff down if you want, or not. And let's start with the tree. So what we'll start with for the tree is, how about, where should we start? Let's start, okay, with the pad and get my keyboard. I'll type the tree for you. Let's start with the that was not a good start. The pH of the cerebral spinal fluid drops. So what's going to happen now? The pH of the cerebral spinal fluid drops, causing the medulla oblongata to, what does the medulla oblongata do? Causing the medulla oblongata to cause muscle CL contraction, not of the legs, of rib muscles and the diaphragm. Period. What does the rib muscles and diaphragm do? Rib muscle and diaphragm muscle contraction causes inhalation, hopefully of an oxygen-rich gas. And so what's that inhalation going to do? Breathing. This, how about, let's say, should return to the set point. I don't know. It's just the tree. You add the rest. The oxygen levels in the blood drop very low. The oxygen levels drop very low, and sensors in the aorta and carotid arteries signal the medulla oblongata to cause rib and diaphragm. I know I just wrote it. Muscle contraction. So what you want to do, if this is cerebral, that should be fine. Cerebral spinal, oh, I spelled it wrong. So I want you to do is use this as your tree and add in a bunch of leaves. There's all kinds of leaves you could put in here. What could possibly cause the pH to drop? Why does the pH drop in response to CO2? That's another good thing to include in there. Rib muscles, diaphragm muscles. Which way does the diaphragm go when it contracts? Why does this increase the inhalation volume of the lungs? Remember that pleural cavity and the two membranes that are separated only by liquid, and there's enough surface tension there so when the thoracic cavity increases, so does the lung volume, actually pulling the air in. And then what could cause oxygen levels in the blood to drop very low, but not already be stimulated by CO2 for breathing? So CO2 is a little finer of a control, but you could put that in there. And then what are your carotid arteries? And what does the pons do versus the medulla oblongata? Which, even though they're all structured right here. And what is cerebral spinal fluid? So there's all kinds of leaves you can add to this. Enjoy. Remember, you want to turn these in by Monday, 10 o'clock, and just attach it as a file in the submit assignments in Blackboard. See you in the morning.